So for that, I will go to Amazon QuickSight by going on Services, QuickSight. And because I just created this AWS account is not registered in QuickSight yet. So I will hit Sign Up for QuickSight. Then here I have the option of subscribing for Amazon QuickSight Standard or Amazon QuickSight Enterprise. And this is the first thing that I would like to tell you if you were following this demo with your AWS account. After using QuickSight, you can go and delete the QuickSight dashboards and unsubscribe from QuickSight to avoid incurring costs in your AWS account. For now, I will choose the standard because what I want to do with QuickSight is pretty basic. And the main difference between standard and enterprise is the single sign-on with Active Directory, so you can do federation to have users that are logged in your Microsoft Active Directory to your Amazon QuickSight and other more granular things. It also gives you an additional of Spice per month. Spice is a processing layer. It's some sort of like a cache that QuickSight can do to accelerate the queries. But in this case, I will be asking QuickSight to be doing all the queries directly in my Amazon Athena. So I'm going to hit continue. I'm going to give that QuickSight a unique account name, which I'm going to call Ref Analytics Demo QuickSight. And I am going to give access to Amazon S3. And I am going to give access to the CloudTrail bucket and Amazon Athena, right? So next I'm going to hit finish. Oh, I need to provide a valid email. Let me put my email here. Just put an email, finish. Now it is creating my QuickSight account. That may take a little while to bake, maybe 1 or 2 minutes. And I'm going to use that time to review what we did so far. We enabled CloudTrail. We created a secondary user called Nicholas. We logged in as that user. We made a bunch of API calls, including turning off a functioning website. We logged back as the user admin. We went after the CloudTrail data, and we saw that it was pretty complex to navigate through all the CloudTrail data on the form that CloudTrail puts in the bucket. And we created an Amazon Athena query to do a select statement, a SQL select statement on top of that data and get the information back to us. Now we are in our QuickSight because we are going to create a data visualization on top of that response. So the first thing, I click in Go to QuickSight Dashboard. And QuickSight, for the first run, it populates a few samples for you, such as just a sample for you to play with business review analysis, people overview analysis, just to give you some working data to change the charts. So this is a sample of a QuickSight dashboard, right? So you could have this dashboard in full screen on your office, right? Or you could have your sales representatives, your security analysts, your social media analysts look into this data. And this data is actually populated regarding one of the QuickSight data sources. So in order to create a new QuickSight data source, we go here on Datasets, and then we click in New Dataset. When we click in New Dataset, those are all the possible integrations that you can have with Amazon QuickSight. You can integrate Adobe Analytics, you can integrate GitHub, Snowflake, Twitter, Amazon Aurora, which is a relational database, Amazon Elasticsearch Service, Spark, which is a Hadoop general purpose framework that you can have running on top of a Hadoop cluster that runs on AWS or somewhere else. You put Spark authentication and credentials here. In our case, we want to have QuickSight go into Athena. So I'm going to click here in Athena and I'm going to give that data source a name, Athena1, and create data source. After I create the data source, I can click here on the table that I want to visualize, right? And then it will, if I click in select, I want to directly query my data, I can hit visualize. So as is, I am pointing QuickSight to my CloudTrail data. And the next thing that I want to do is click in here, admin, manage QuickSight, security and permissions, add or remove. And I also want QuickSight to be able to go on S3 to interact with the data that is in the CloudTrail bucket. So I want to hit here, S3, and I want to give access to the corresponding buckets to QuickSight, right? And now QuickSight is able to go to Athena to execute the queries and also in S3 to read the data. Update. And when I go back to my data visualization by clicking here on the QuickSight logo, CloudTrail, I will already have, if I click here in event name, for example, QuickSight is doing an Athena query that queries S3 and gets that information for me and plots. So I can see that if I do a graph, a bar, according to events that happens in my AWS account, and remember that I am still not filtering by the user Nicholas. I'm just getting every single API call that is happening in my AWS account. And the reason why put object has way more here is because when CloudTrail adds things to S3, it is doing a put object operation, right? So if you can also apply some filters here and exclude the CloudTrail activity itself, right? Because it is impacting on the put object because I just enabled CloudTrail. And for now, CloudTrail is doing way more work than everything else in my account because I just have CloudTrail logging things. So now let's see if I can create a custom report based on what I saw here, based on what I saw in terms of what were the specific API calls that Nicholas did on the console, right? The specific API calls that Nicholas did in the console. So I'm going back to CloudTrail and I'm going back here, clicking on the logo, datasets, and I am going to create a new dataset, also pointing to Athena. And this dataset will already be filtered by only the requests made by Nicholas on the console. So I'm gonna name this Athena2, create data source, and I'm going to hit the button Use Custom SQL. I am going to paste my custom SQL and call it Nicholas activity, confirm query. Oh, actually, of course, I have to replace the table name. So I'm actually going to get this very same query that I did here and put it here. That's why I got that exception. Confirm query. Now I want to directly query my data, visualize, and now in this specific QuickSight visualization, I will only be visualizing the events that were made by Nicholas, right? So if I click here in user agent, for example, I will see that it is doing a count by user agent, and those API calls were made to the EC2 console, and all those other API calls were done from console.amazonaws.com. Now, if I click here in user identity, or actually better, if I click here in, there is a error code, I can see that this user made API calls that got some access denied, 25 of them, and some other API calls that are 56 API calls that were access granted. And if I click here, I can easily transform that into a pie chart. So this is just an example on how you can get information that is in S3 that is queried by Athena and visualized in QuickSight. In this case, we use the CloudTrail dataset. I can rename this null to access granted API calls, and I can change this color as well. So access denied is red and access granted is green. So I can see that this user made 25 access denied API calls in the AWS Management Console and 56 access granted API calls in the AWS Management Console. So this gives you an idea because the state that I want you to be thinking right now is security dashboards that can be used elsewhere, right? So there are AWS documentation pages with lots of recommended queries and recommended insights you can extract out of CloudTrail data. And that's it. You can resize this, you can make this bigger, smaller, you can add multiple visualizations in the same dashboard as well, right? So you can add another visual here, you can drag and drop, you can resize to put them side by side, and then in this one, you can do by event time. And remember that this dataset is already pre-filtered as Nicholas, right? Because it is working on the data set that is already pre-filtered by Nicholas. And you can see line charts, you can see pie charts, you can see donut charts. QuickSight is a data visualization tool that accepts those data sources here. So when you click in new data set, if you can query information using those services here, you can have a way of visualizing them in QuickSight. The demo gave you a good overall idea on how embracing analytics helps with navigating through data. We moved from seeing compressed files on S3 to query them with Amazon Athena, then engaged QuickSight to create some quick visualizations. In the demo, we could see the request was made by the user Nicholas. We could also see the IP address that the request came from, the timestamp, and other things that were logged by CloudTrail. We could also see all other API activity made by that user. So if that was a compromised account, we could have all the API trail left behind. I have one caveat and one solution for you now. The caveat is, CloudTrail already adds data into S3 in a friendly way to be consumed by Amazon Athena. Although we used a service integration and built a graph with minimal data modification, some datasets may need to be refined with the use of data processing tools. Some AWS services that can do that data transformation are Amazon EMR, Glue, AWS Lambda, or even code running on top of EC2 instances, depending on the dataset size and complexity. Actually, you can even use your computer to prepare the data before querying. I strongly encourage that you continue your journey across studying data processing and data transformation, because that plays big part on your journey as a data scientist. Now, my suggestion is, if you want to practice on your own, watching the demo again and experimenting on your own AWS account can also be a good idea. And remember, you don't need to limit QuickSight and data visualization tools to CloudTrail data only. The sky is the limit, and I hope this demo made you excited enough to experiment doing your own queries with your own datasets. In the demo, you could see how easy it is to build descriptive analysis in order to identify what was done, no matter if the data is infrastructure logging, e-commerce websites, social media feeds, IoT, or any other. The tools are basically the same, and I strongly suggest deeply exploring the AWS services involved in order to craft individual solutions for your needs. Remember the 4 types of data analytics: descriptive, diagnostic, predictive, and prescriptive. Although we realized that having charts about what is going on with your cloud infrastructure is a good thing, those are initial steps for developing a more mature cloud governance mindset. So speaking about the other types, let's talk a bit more about the predictive analysis, which is the one that tends to discover what is likely to happen in the future. Although that looks like a back to the future kind of thing, it is real and totally doable nowadays. It is very likely that you will need machine learning and neural networks for achieving that. That's because you will need to work with your datasets by aggregating data and mixing some processing power into that recipe. Although that sounds complicated, there are AWS managed services such as Amazon SageMaker, Amazon Lookout, AWS Cost Anomaly Detection, and other services that had already made the machine learning undifferentiated heavy lifting for you. You were right. There is no need to have a PhD in mathematics in order to do those things nowadays. That's right, Amazon Web Services has democratized the access to machine learning for everyone. Machine learning, or ML for short, would be able to analyze and predict when a bad API call is performed based on the activity history of that specific API call over time, which may include other aspects. If you have that level of monitoring, you are in advantage regarding infrastructure security because you can track and automatically respond to account modifications right before they happen or before something bad happens. Reinforcing security guardrails and AWS resources with a self-healing infrastructure. When you have predictive and prescriptive analysis working together, the next step is reducing false positives to have more precise automatic decision making. Let me give you one example. One of the things that CloudTrail logs is logging activity on the AWS Management Console. If you have a solution that detects if a user is repeatedly trying to log in the console with logging failures, the solution can flag that as a compromised account, especially if that user never had that type of failure in the past. And that is where I want to focus, on the especially if that user never had that type of failure in the past. Because if a user keeps changing and forgetting passwords all the time, would that be considered an outlier? When looking for anomalies, it is important to consider the patterns and the interactions with other entities or systems as well. For example, if a user is constantly trying to log in the console and keeps forgetting the passwords all the time, it may be more challenging for the predictive analysis algorithm to detect that as a red flag. In this case, other variables should be considered in order to qualify for potential deviations, which can be login time, IP addresses, browser agents, etc. There are many factors that influence on how systems behave with each other and how people interact with systems. Those variables can go from something regarding the own system to something totally non-obvious, like user feelings, keyboard issues on the other side, weather, and other variables. Yes, weather, you heard it right. Correlation causality is a very interesting topic, and there are lots of interesting books and resources around it. And overall, there is a big race in machine learning to reduce false positives, which can only be made by aggregating the largest amount of information you can collect and process all together with algorithms. Some of those things can be quickly evaluated by simple if statements in source code, but sometimes it requires cross-analyzing information across multiple computer systems. That is where the complexity comes from. That is why it is very common to use GPU processing and fast storage mechanisms for machine learning-based data solutions. Welcome to data science. In the demo, and all along this course, I focused on logs regarding AWS API calls provided by CloudTrail, but there are other AWS services which also provide out-of-the-box logging you can use, such as load balancer logs, networking logs that can be used for networking troubleshooting, S3 static web pages, access logs, content delivery network logs, AWS billing log files, and many others, all delivered into Amazon S3 for further analysis with other AWS services. If you need a dataset to start, check out the AWS datasets page. You can also build something with your own dataset. Go build something and show us what you built in the forums. We would love to see that. Now, since Amazon S3 is data agnostic, which in other words, it just means that it will store it, whatever you put inside a bucket, it is very common to create a custom data analytics solution by having systems and applications adding data into Amazon S3. We wanted to keep this introductory data analytics course short for you, but we have another 4-week course called Introduction to Designing Data Lakes in AWS that has an entire week just focused on different strategies to ingest the data into S3. You will discover that there are different data types and different methods to be used according each data type. That course, Introduction to Designing Data Lakes in AWS, also talks about data ingestion, processing, and visualization. Check the course notes for more information about data-related courses published by the AWS training and certification team. I hope you enjoyed this short course. The secret to successful learning is absorbing one step at a time, and by learning descriptive analysis, I feel you got what you need to move to the next step in your data analytics journey. How do you feel? Hey, congratulations! you've made it through to the end of the data analytics class. Good job learning about the basics of data analytics, including what are the main types of data analytics and why doing it in the cloud is a very good idea. You should also have a good understanding of the value proposition of data analytics and why, where, and how it may be present right now in everybody's lives. You continue to progress as you learned the basics of some popular AWS services used towards data analytics solutions, such as Amazon S3, Amazon Athena, and Amazon QuickSight. And you finished strong by watching a demo showing how to bundle up those AWS services together to build up a basic data analytics solutions that builds charts about API activity in an AWS account with information provided by AWS CloudTrail. I hope this inspired you to continue learning, exploring, and experimenting with data analytics, and I hope you feel encouraged by experimenting with your own data sets as well. I have definitely enjoyed bringing this content to you, and I hope you enjoyed watching as well. And I also hope to see you on the next course.